Okay, now our phase 2 comes along, and with phase 2 we have gone through a little bit of ASP.NET training. So we have redeveloped our website using ASP.NET. We have ASPX web pages with code behind pages, and we have a master page that the different web pages are using. And so we want to deploy that new version of our website instead of this older version. So we'll look at what we've done in Visual Studio for that. Okay, so let's go over to Visual Studio again. This was our version 1 of the website with HTML files. I'm going to go ahead and close that solution, and then I'm going to go ahead and go over to File, Open Website, and go in here to my new version 2 of my website, Personal V2 that I created. Notice that I have ASPX pages. If I expand these out, they have code behind pages. I have a master page, so that's all set up, and this has been using this set up to use the same template and basically repurpose the same content as an ASP.NET version of my website, and getting that reuse that's possible with master pages. So I'd like to upload this version of my site, which will look very similar to the user in a browser, but is actually using a different technology behind the scenes. So I'll go over to FileZilla, and instead of just uploading what we had using our personal version 1 site definition in FileZilla, we should make a new site definition because this actually has a different local directory. So I'm going to go to File, Site Manager. I'm going to go ahead and take this personal version 1 that we already had before that was acceptable on the General tab, because all of these settings will still connect us out to our remote server using FTP, but on the Advanced tab, this default local directory ends in personal version 1, and that's not the version of the folder that we want to use locally. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having to type all these settings out again for a new site, I'm just going to select the first site we had that has a lot of the settings we need and hit duplicate or certain versions of FTP. FileZilla say copy here, but either way, click that button's always located in the bottom right hand here, and I'm going to change the name. Instead of copy of personal v1, I'll just rename that to copy or a personal v2 here. So there's the new name, and all I actually need to change, nothing on the general, just on this advanced, I can go over here and browse for my default local directory, again through my documents, and then Visual Studio 2012, and then websites, and then here we're going to choose personal v2 for the new version of the local directory. And I'll leave that default remote directory alone because we just want to go to the root. So I hit OK, and now once again under the File menu you've got this drop down list, and we can go to this ever-growing list of versions of our sites that we connect to. So I'll connect now, and now I'm using this to publish version 2. So you'll notice up here in the local file path I am at personal v2, and then over here in the remote file path I'm just at the slash of the root folder. On the left hand side locally you have all of this new stuff. Notice the ASPX pages and the code behind and the master page down here. On the right hand side though, I have all my original content, and this is where sometimes people get confused with FileZilla. You need to kind of maintain this side on the right in addition to pushing new content from the left local directory to the remote directory. So some of this stuff here, if I have a copy of it locally, and I do, I can really delete any and all of this, or you could archive it kind of like we did with that original content. So I'm going to select all of this stuff here other than my information from original GoDaddy, and I'm just going to right click it and choose delete, because I don't want these extra static HTML version 1 files in there. We're just going to move in the version 2 ASP.NET files in here once this is all deleted. Okay, and ignore that ASP.NET client, it's not refreshing with the delete on there. So I'm going to go ahead and select again everything but my archive folder. So I'll click into this left frame for local content, Control A to select everything, Control click on archive to deselect that, and then right click on this selected area and choose upload, and this pushes all of the new content out there. So now my version 2 content is being published with FileZilla, and we'll return when that's so. Alright, let's go ahead and have a quick look at what we have now that is uploaded properly. If I come out here and refresh, I won't see anything for the index request, but if I just ask for the domain itself, that takes us to our default page, which is no longer index.html. It's actually that default.aspx. If you're using ASP.NET, at least that would be typical. And you'll see this is very much seems to be the same sort of content here. I did update one of my photos to be a Kansas City photo there, but as you look through, it looks like the same content really. Except for that one, evidently. Didn't update that link. But here's my resume.aspx. And if I go back to home, you'll see it's going to actually ask for that default.aspx page. So these are ASPX pages that we've uploaded. So we have that. Now, what I want to do is show you one of the common pitfalls with FileZilla. Okay, so let's say we want to make some changes. Let's look at maintaining our content. So more often than setting up new site definitions, you'll actually just be maintaining content for a website you've already published before. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio, and over here with Visual Studio I'm going to look at my content, and I'll go to this, let's say my index page, actually default page, and as I come into this default page you'll see that we already have this image here, and I'd like to swap it out for another image that I'm going to use. So I'll go ahead and tack down my Solution Explorer for a second. That's way bigger than I wanted it to be. Let's try that again. There we go, just resize that guy. And I'm going to go ahead and open up another folder where I have an image that I want. Not that one. Let's go ahead to this one, and let's drag in this file that I want. I'll drag it into images. So there it is, and while I'm at it, I'll go find that image, and I'll hit F2 to go into rename and actually just copy the name of that file. Alright, so I'm going to go here to the image itself, and then I'll switch over to the source, and now I'm seeing it listed in the source, and I'll just go ahead and paste over the previous file name with the new file name for the file I just dragged in there. It already has width and height that have been specified on there. I'll just update that to height of 150. So I'll save this, and I've made some basic changes. You can see if I switch back to the design that now we have that image has been updated for the default page. So if you think about it, I've only actually made changes to two things in this website. I've added a file to the images folder, and I've updated the default ASPX page for the code that references this particular image right here. So I'm going to go ahead and save my work here in Visual Studio, and then I'm going to go back to FileZilla. And again, using the drop down, since I'm just doing maintenance here, I'll go over to the Personal V2. At this point, you're really pretty much done with the Personal V1 version of that site. If you wanted to go back to File Site Manager, you could take this Personal V1 and delete it if you wanted to. But regardless, we're just going to connect to Personal V2 and hit OK, the abort option there. And so you'll see that we're connected again to the Personal V2 version of our website here locally, and to the root folder remotely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just the files that I want to upload. So I'm going to take this default, and I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go to upload, and then it asks me if I want to overwrite this. I usually let it overwrite everything for only the current queue, so that I'm reminded that I am overwriting, but usually that's what I want to do when I'm maintaining the files, because I'm overwriting the old information with the new. So I hit OK, and now we should see that that got uploaded. And if I go over to refresh my page here out in the browser, I have a problem. I forgot to upload that image. I did upload the default ASPX page with a code that says what the image is, but we didn't actually upload that file to that location. So that's going to be my images folder. So I'm going to go over here to the images folder on the left locally, and this is one of those missteps I want you to watch out for. I go double click on the images folder here, and I go find the image that I wanted to upload, Kansas Explorer, and I'm getting ready to upload this. If I right click right now and go to upload, this would be a classic misstep, because if I do this, and I'll go ahead and do it, you'll see that it says that it uploaded it, but notice over here on the right we're still in the root folder. So this file got uploaded to the wrong place. If I go back over to the browser and refresh, it still doesn't work because it can't find that file in the images folder, which is where it was supposed to be. So back to FileZilla, I don't need this guy here. I can right click and delete him. What I needed to have happen is after I went into the images folder, right here locally, I needed to also go into the images folder right here on the remote side. So you need to keep these folders in sync if you're doing this sort of onesie twosie updates like I'm doing here. So I'm going to right click on Kansas Explorer and upload from the images folder here to the images folder there. Now it's been updated successfully. If I go back to the browser and refresh, we'll see sure enough there's my image has loaded into the correct place. So that's how we can do maintenance. If you need to go up to the previous directory in FileZilla, you can click on this directory with the dot dot button. That's actually sort of the up button in FileZilla. It's kind of odd. It looks like a folder, but it represents the current folder or going up to the next folder. So we are now as high as we can be on the remote side, and I am in Personal V2, my root folder locally as well. Okay, and that takes us to our last phase here. I wanted to go ahead and show an example of uploading a application root directory as a sub website hosted off of your domain. So you'll be creating quite a few projects in the track, and when you want to have each one of these separate websites loaded as sub websites within your domain, you'll need to log into Centric Hosting and set up application root directories, which is a pretty quick process once you see where it's located. But after you've done that and you've listed a folder like WG for our Widgets and Gadgets project, you've listed it as an application root directory with GoDaddy, then you're going to want to set up FileZilla so you can upload that content. So once again, I have another website that I've been working on, File, Open Website here in Visual Studio, and WG Labs is my version of the WG project. And so once I've opened this, I'll show you here my default page for WG Labs. It's got some dummy content here and so on. This is roughly for my WG project. So there's some content, and I'm going to go ahead and go back over to FileZilla, and let's make a site definition for this. So File, Site Manager. I'm going to take that Personal V2, which we had working just fine, and I'm going to duplicate it because I want to make a version of this, a site definition. I'll use lowercase. I kind of prefer to do it that way. But we're going to make a site definition for this that represents just uploading content for WG. As one of our sub websites, this is going to have its own folder locally on your computer, and it's also going to be a subfolder of your remote site. So this information on the General tab again is totally fine. We can leave that alone. On the Advanced tab, I'm going to go over here and say that locally I need to browse and find where this folder is. And again, we call the local version of WG that we worked on ourselves, not the one we did in class, but the ones we worked on ourselves, is called WG Labs, because you're practicing with that. So I'm going to select that locally. That is my local version of the website. And then remotely, this is going to be hosted in this subfolder you would have designated as an application root folder. It's called WG. So you would have had to have set this up in advance to be called WG as an application root directory so that it can be treated as its own little mini website with its own web config that doesn't tie in with the root web config in our root website. So I hit OK. And now I'm going to go ahead and connect to WG, and you'll see that again we wound up here at the correct local location, WG Labs, and then also we should have gone to WG. Now this is a common pitfall. Notice I didn't actually go to WG on the remote site, and that's because that folder has not been created. We set up the server to treat it as an application root directory, but we did not actually add the folder here in FileZilla, so that's easy to fix. I'm just going to right click out here in the open white space or maybe off the root folder and go to create directory, and I'll call this WG. So you'll see I do now have that folder. So if I go and try to reconnect using this drop down to WG again, you'll see now we are connected properly on the right hand side here to WG, to that subfolder, and you'll notice there's nothing inside of it yet. So once again, I'm just going to take all of my work on the left, Control A, maybe deselect a few things that I don't need, and then right click and upload, and now it will upload everything over there. And then once that's done, we'll look at the rest. Okay, so we've had our directory listing successful. The transfer was complete. So I'm going to switch back over to the browser and let's see what we have now for our new little mini website hosted off of our domain. It was WG was the name of the folder, so I'm just putting that into the browser and hitting enter. And you can see I've got this totally different website that has to do with product information for my widgets and gadgets labs. So you can see that's been updated now, and I can click around through to various pages here. So anyway, that has been a quick overview of using FileZilla in the Career Track program. Thanks again, and enjoy.